You might think that storytelling is something that's only really useful in feature films and big TV shows, but actually it's really, really useful and really important in shorter form content. Anything that's under 5 minutes can really learn from all of the 90-minute feature films. So in this episode, I want to share with you how you can tell a great story in 5 minutes or less. Hello splicers, welcome back to another episode of the video editing podcast from Unsplice with me, your host Shiny. Thank you so much for joining me again. Now, as human beings, we communicate via stories. If you came home from a long day and you're speaking to a friend or a loved one about how your day was, you're going to say, oh, this thing happened today, it was so and so, and this happened. I was on the train and this happened. We naturally speak in stories. It's how we communicate, and that's why stories are so engaging to us. And so that's why I want to help you tell an engaging story in under 5 minutes. Because the principles are the same, whether you are editing videos or you are giving a speech at a wedding or you are just communicating with your friends about what happened on the train. The principles are the same if you want to keep attention and keep the audience all the way through to the end. So the first thing you need to think about is starting with a compelling hook. You need to grab the audience's attention from the beginning with your most attractive footage or compelling action. So depending on the vibe of your edit, depends if you want to open on some striking footage and the visuals really tell the story, or if you want to go in with a cold open. This is when you're dropped in the heat of the action in the edit with no context whatsoever. Let's say we just cut in straight. For example, we're in the middle of a battlefield, there's gun bullets flying everywhere, and the person on camera is diving from cover to cover. That is a cold open with a lot of action and a lot of heart, and you're just thrown in, and it asks so many questions, or it gets you to ask so many questions like, what's going on? What's happening? For example, I could open a story even in speech form, like saying, oh my God. And that's it. And all of a sudden, I've got your interest because you're thinking, what's caused this reaction? That is the same reaction that you want from your audience with that first shot. Either, oh wow, what beauty, I can't wait to see what comes next, or spark a question that needs answering. And that's what a cold open does. So really that's how you open, whether it's a YouTube video or it's something for social media or it's a documentary. If you want to hook people from the very beginning, you need to get them to ask themselves a question. You need to open a question that needs answering. And that is your compelling hook. So now that you have your compelling hook, you need to keep it focused. Keep the story focused. Stick to one single, well-defined story thread that goes through the entire film. And that will avoid confusing the audience. If you have a very short amount of time to communicate with your audience, then the smaller the time, the fewer the story threads. What's the story thread? It's like your why, it's the purpose that person should be watching and continue watching. Let's say it's a transformation. So somebody is failed, they flunked out of school, and they are trying to pass their degree, trying to get their degree up against all the odds. That is a story thread. It's a story of overcoming adversity against all the odds. This person needs to achieve that. That's one story thread. So you need to think hard about what that story thread is for yours, whether it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes. A 5-minute film could have 2 story threads, but there will be one main narrative that the entire edit is about. So make sure it's very clear and you stick to it all the way through. Number 3 is build rapport. You need to build rapport and develop characters that an audience can connect with emotionally. Whatever it is you're viewing on screen. By the way, a character does not necessarily have to be a person. For example, let's say you're creating a shoe commercial and we don't have anybody talking. We're just showing shoes. The shoe is the character. So you now want to develop a shoe that the audience can connect with emotionally, either because that shoe is achieving incredible things and it creates a bit of a wow, or it is doing the same kind of things that the audience understands. Running, it's going for a run, let's say it's just a pair of shoes and we're just following these shoes on screen and nothing else. And it's out in the park, it's going for a run, and all of the runners are connecting now, and that foot steps in a puddle. And now all of the runners who are watching this are thinking, I know exactly how that feels. They're connecting on an emotional level to a pair of shoes purely because it's a situation they've been in before. So create these moments and connect with the audience on an emotional level. And that is how you build rapport and get the audience wanting to know what happens next. Because now you need to build rapport, then you need to build tension and conflict. Introduce obstacles or challenges the characters must overcome. This is going to add depth and excitement to the story, but it's really, really, really important that your story has this. Even if it's just once, because even in 30 seconds, you should have some kind of conflict or some kind of tension that is pulling in the opposite direction to the direction that we want to go. And that could be by mixing up the pacing, that could be mixing up the rhythm, movement, and tone. We need to build tension and conflict into the character and the character's journey. So, as I said, obstacles and challenges. One is enough for a short story, but if you've got 5 minutes, for example, you could have 3 obstacles just getting knocked down and coming back, knocked down and coming back, knocked down and coming back, and that would create a really compelling narrative. And again, it doesn't have to be about a character. A character can be anything. Character can be a country, it can be a city, it can be a person. It doesn't have to be the main character in a story. It could be from the perspective of the guide and not necessarily the hero of the journey. So imagine if Lord of the Rings was told from the perspective only of Gandalf. We would still be following Frodo's journey, but we'd be weaving in and out of that, and it'd be from a different perspective of just like of guidance and watching this person grow. So build tension and conflict into the story, because that is how you're going to keep people watching and get people excited to hear what happens next. And finally, you need to have a clear structure. Plan your story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. What does that mean? Well, it's the 3-act structure, technically. Beginning means you need to establish with a compelling hook, and you need to build rapport. You need to create some kind of connection. You need to establish the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why, so that we understand what the story is about and connect with the character or thing that the story is about. That's the beginning. That's the first quarter of your story. Then the middle, which is about half, and then you've got the end, which is 1/4 of the entire total duration of the film. The middle is where you build rapport and you also create this tension or conflict. So whether it's 30 seconds or 5 minutes, you've now got a good sort of bench line of how long you should spend on what. Then, of course, the end is the conclusion where you answer all the questions. So spark a question, build rapport, show the conflict, and then resolve the conflict and answer all the questions at the end. That's a fantastic framework for you to stick to create a compelling story and a great story in 5 minutes or less. I'll go through that again. Spark a question, build rapport, show the conflict, resolve the conflict, and answer all the question at the end. And that gives you a framework for how to tell a great story in 5 minutes or less. But what are you working on at the moment that you can implement this in? Let me know in the comments.